All right, now we are on to solving radical equations. So a radical equation is when you have a variable inside your radical. So here's just a quick example. It doesn't just have to be a square root. It could be cube root, fourth root, something like that. In order to solve this sort of equation, you need to raise both sides of your equation to the index, the power of the index. We'll go through some examples to see what that means. So we'll start with a pretty basic one. We have square root of x minus 5 equals 14. Remember that index is that number that's out here. Well, when it's the square root, we don't write that. However, the square root has an index of 2. So we're going to raise it to the second power because square root and square cancel one another off. So we have x minus 5 left on the left side, and 14 squared is 196. And then we just solve it like a regular equation. So we have to add 5 to get 201. Now it's really, really important that you check your work because when we deal with square roots, we can't have a negative square root. So we have to make sure that what we think our solution is, actually works. So we plug 201 back in for x. So 201 minus 5 does give us 196, and we know the square root of 196 is 14. So this is a valid answer. Okay. I'd like you guys to use that knowledge and solve this one. Okay, here's another one that is a little, has a few more steps to it. Still really basic to solve. However, you must get your square root all by itself. You have to isolate that radical before you can solve. So we need to subtract 3 from both sides. So we get square root of 6x plus 7 equals 6. Now we can raise both sides to the second power. We can square both sides. The reason we do that is because we need that square to cancel off our square root. So the left side is 6x plus 7, and then 6 squared is 36. Now this is a two-step equation from Algebra 1. Subtract your 7 and get 29. Divide by 6. Our answer is 29 over 6, which is okay. So now plug that 29 over 6 back in for x in your original. So I did that down here. 6 times x plus 7. Take the square root of that, plus 3 is supposed to be 9. Well, I know those 6's will cancel, so I'll have 29 plus 7, which gives us 36. Square root of 36 is 6, plus 3 does indeed give me 9. So again, this solution works. Here's another type of example. We still need to isolate our variable. However, this time it involves division by -2. So 14 divided by -2 is where I got that -7. Here also it's a cube root, so instead of raising it to the second power like our last two examples, we need to raise it to the third power to cancel off the cube root. Cube still cancels off the cube root, so we're left with x minus 3, and then -7 to the third gives us -343. So we're going to add 3 to get our solution of -340. There's my work for checking. This one works as well. Okay, last one here. You have two cube roots that are set equal to each other, so we cube both sides right away. However, when you cube the right side, you need to make sure that you cube that coefficient out in front as well. So that looks like 3x on the left side, and then 2 cubed times x minus 1. Well, 2 cubed we know is 8, so now I distribute, and now I solve by subtracting my 5x. Subtracting my 8x to get -5x and divide by -5. Here's my work. This one works as well. Last example, we're going to have to use factoring / quadratic formula. So here we have x plus 1 equals square root of 2x plus 10. Our radical is already isolated, so now we just have to get rid of that radical by squaring both sides. Be very, very careful when you square this left side. You have to FOIL. So I did that in my head. I apologize I didn't show that. But when you FOIL this, x plus 1 times x plus 1 gives us x squared plus 2x plus 1 equal to 2x plus 10. So now I moved my 2x to the other side, which cancels it off, and then subtract my 10. So I get x squared minus 9 equals 0. You can either use quadratic formula. You can add 9 and take the square root. I chose to factor. So we get x equals -3 and x equals +3. And here I need to plug both of them in. So I plug my -3 in and I get negative into the original, so up here. -3 plus 1 gives me -2, so my right side must equal -2 in order for this to work. So 2 times -3 gives me -6 plus 10. Square root of 4 is +2. Since that does not equal -2, we call this an extraneous solution. So x equals -3 is extraneous, means it doesn't output the proper answer. However, when I plug in +3, this one works. So x equals 3 is a real solution. X equals -3 is what we call extraneous.